Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Christina Boyer? She is the topic of a Hulu documentary titled Demons and Saviors. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Christina Elaine Boyer was born on October 23, 1969, in Columbus, Ohio. Her mother had difficulty regulating her intake of substances and did not want to care for her. Christina was left at a hospital when she was 10 months old. She was placed with a local couple named John and Joan Resch. The couple adopted Christina when she was 2 years old. Christina claimed that her brother committed terrible offenses against her when she was 12, and her adoptive parents did not believe her when she finally told them. At the age of 14, Christina's family members started to believe that she had magical powers. Specifically, they believed that she could move objects with her mind. The power became noticeable when she was angry, I guess like a telekinetic version of the Incredible Hulk. Her adoptive parents were concerned that evil forces were behind these amazing abilities. Joan contacted a reporter who came by the family house with a photographer. They waited in the house for something to happen. After a few hours, a phone lifted into the air and flew across Christina's lap. The photographer managed to capture a shot of the phone in midair. The reporter would later say that he didn't see Christina do anything to cause the phone to move. The image was published, and the story of Christina and her telekinetic powers spread faster than flying phones. It attracted the attention of many more reporters, as well as people interested in the paranormal. On one occasion, reporters were in Christina's house waiting for a telekinetic event. After about 9 hours, they became tired of waiting and placed their cameras on the floor, like they were taking a break. Christina did not realize that one camera that was pointed at her was still recording. When she thought no one was looking, she pulled a lamp over with her right hand and pretended to be surprised by it flying to the floor. This blatant attempt at deception and manipulation eroded Christina's credibility, but not everybody lost faith in her. Just because she faked the lamp incident did not mean that she faked all the other movements. A paranormal researcher named William Roll was one of the people who did not lose faith in Christina. He moved into her family house so he could record video and interview her. William was desperate to capture something interesting on camera, but all he managed to record was a lot of boredom. William eventually convinced Christina's adoptive parents to allow him to take her to North Carolina, where he and his colleagues would conduct experiments to study Christina's amazing abilities. Christina was happy to go on the trip and enjoyed her time with the researchers, including a mental health counselor named Jeannie Wagle. Eventually, Christina's parents made her return to Ohio, but she did not stay home long. She married a man named James at the age of 16. Things didn't work out for the happy couple. Christina left James and became pregnant. The identity of the father has never been made public. Christina had a daughter named Amber on September 29, 1988. In 1990, Christina married a man named Larry Boyer and changed her last name. She claimed that Larry physically attacked her, therefore she took Amber and left the state in September 1991. At this time, the paranormal researcher William Roll and the mental health counselor Jeannie Wagle lived in Carrollton, Georgia. Christina and Amber moved there and briefly lived with Jeannie before moving into an apartment. To earn money, Christina performed secretarial work for Jeannie in Jeannie's house/office. Sometime around the beginning of March 1992, Christina started dating a local man named David Heron. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. According to Christina, on Friday, April 10, 1992, David told her that Amber hit her head after falling on a sidewalk near his trailer. Christina and Amber were staying at David's trailer at this time. The next day, David informed Christina that Amber hit her head after falling downstairs. On Tuesday, April 14, 1992, Christina and Amber were still at David's trailer. David left in the morning and arrived back not long after 11 a.m. Amber was sitting and watching television. Christina left the trailer sometime around 12:45 p.m. to go to Jeannie's house to work. She believed that Amber was fine at that time. David was caring for her. David would later say that he took Amber outside to play. Sometime around 4 p.m., he noticed that Amber was staggering around, so he put her in bed. At around 5:30 p.m., David tried to wake Amber up, but she would not wake up. David called Jeannie's house trying to reach Christina, but Christina had just departed. David told Jeannie, quote, "I can't get Amber up," unquote. Jeannie told him that Christina was on her way to his trailer. Christina arrived at David's trailer sometime around 6 to 6:30 p.m., and David informed her that Amber was unresponsive. Christina and David placed Amber into David's vehicle. David was in the driver's seat as Christina performed CPR. Christina was worried about taking Amber to the hospital because she was afraid that social services would take Amber away from her. She told David to stop the car at a payphone. Looking for advice, Christina called Jeannie, who told her to take Amber to the hospital. When the couple arrived at the hospital at 7 p.m., hospital staff noticed that Amber had bruises and cuts on her face and body. She was pronounced dead. There was nothing they could do for her. It appeared as though she had died from blunt force trauma. Hospital staff contacted the authorities. David was arrested immediately and pointed the finger at Christina, which led to her being arrested as well. The police justified arresting both David and Christina under the theory that the injuries that Amber sustained occurred over several days. In addition, they thought that the attack could have happened before Christina left for work. Christina and David were charged with malice murder, felony murder, aggravated battery, and cruelty to children. Christina's trial was scheduled to start at the end of October 1994. She claimed that her lawyer spoke to her before the trial and informed her that the state had a great case. He recommended that she take an Alford plea, which is like a guilty plea where the defendant concedes that the state has enough evidence to get a conviction. However, the defendant still maintains their innocence. If Christina was found guilty at trial, she could have been executed. But with the Alford plea, she would avoid that fate. Christina decided to accept the deal and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole plus 20 years. In January 1995, David Heron went to trial. On February 3, he was found not guilty on every charge except the cruelty charge. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. David was released in 2011. Christina has experienced buyer's remorse as far as her Alford plea. She has been desperately declaring her innocence to anyone who would listen. Christina was denied parole in 1999. After she was denied again in 2007, a lawyer named Richard Allen agreed to represent her. Richard contacted a journalist who took an interest in the case. She published an article which raised doubts about Christina's guilt. In March 2009, Richard Allen died of a heart attack. Despite this setback for Christina, other people eventually took an interest in her case and advocated for her, including professors and students at Georgetown University. Despite the support, Christina was denied parole several more times. At the time making this video, she has been denied 9 times altogether and remains in prison. Now moving to my analysis. Christina continues to maintain her innocence, and she has many people who support her. The prosecutor and investigators disagree. They think that Christina is exactly where she needs to be. Furthermore, her public defender implied that the case against her was overwhelming. This brings me to the question, was Christina Boyer actually guilty? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that Christina was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. Investigators identified 30 instances where Christina mistreated Amber verbally or physically. For example, Christina admitted that she spanked Amber. Witnesses said that Christina was harsh called Amber names, locked Amber in her room, and smacked her in the head. Amber had dozens of injuries on her body when she arrived at the hospital, including bruises and cuts. The level of damage was described as shocking. Medical experts said that not all the injuries were inflicted at the same time, like they were not all inflicted that day. Someone had been harming Amber for quite a while, at least several days. Damage to Amber's face matched a belt that was found in Christina's apartment. Christina had been staying at David's trailer for at least 4 days prior to Amber's death. Christina should have known if David was harming Amber and may have been the one who was causing the damage. If David was causing the harm, why didn't Christina stop him? On the day Amber died, both Christina and David had been alone in the trailer with her at different times. Christina was alone with Amber from about 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., and David was alone with her from about 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. The state argued that the fatal blow occurred within 8 hours of when Amber died. Assuming that Amber was dead prior to arriving at the hospital, both Christina and David had the opportunity to kill her. The authorities did not know who delivered the fatal blow to Amber. It could have been Christina, but it may have been David. Under the felony murder rule, it doesn't matter. They were both engaging in a felony when Amber died. Christina told David to stop his vehicle while they were taking Amber to the hospital. She wanted to use a payphone to call Jeannie. This is an unusual move for someone who is trying to save a person's life. Whose interest was Christina really protecting? David claimed that Christina must have caused Amber's death. Christina claimed that she had never caused serious injuries to Amber. That's not the greatest response to argue for innocence. Usually an innocent person would say, I never hurt that person, I never laid a hand on them, not something like, I didn't hurt them badly. Christina had appeared in adults-only videos, which were made by her neighbor. In one video, which was recorded in the neighbor's house, Amber walked into the room during the recording, so Christina had Amber in the same house as the videos were being recorded. Christina grabbed Amber, took her to another room, and spanked her. Christina had a history of being manipulative. When she was younger, she tried to convince people that she had magical powers. She was even caught on video, leisurely, letting loose a laughable and ludicrous lamp levitation legerdemain. Moving to the exculpatory factors, a medical examiner said that when Amber sustained the fatal blow, she would have appeared normal for 30 minutes at the most. David's story was that Amber was fine for hours and then started staggering. He put her to bed. Later, he was unable to wake her up. David was clearly lying. Maybe he was lying because he killed Amber alone. In theory, David could have carried out all the physical attacks alone, not only the fatal attack. There were no witnesses to the murder, no video. When considering all the evidence, do I think that Christina Boyer was guilty? I believe she was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the battery and the cruelty charges, but I'm not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt on the murder charge. As far as in reality, I do believe that Christina was guilty of all charges. I don't think she necessarily delivered the fatal blow, but she did engage in illegal behavior which contributed to Amber's death. So again, under the felony murder rule, she was guilty of murder. I think the high level of disagreement on this case stems from how people view the culpability of perpetrators who contribute to the death of a person in different ways. Those who believe that Christina is guilty say that it doesn't matter if she delivered the fatal blow. It doesn't even matter if she was in the trailer when it happened. Christina had been harming Amber for several days. Amber's death was foreseeable. Those who believe that Christina is not guilty assert that the state must determine who actually delivered the fatal blow in order to have a just prosecution. This is an interesting argument, but again, under the felony murder rule, the state is not obligated to figure out who physically carried out the murder. I think Christina's best hope is to argue that she had poor representation before her Alford plea and to seek parole. Moving to the next question, what are my thoughts on the documentary Demons and Saviors? Overall, I thought the documentary was good, but there were a few areas of concern. Some of the key inculpatory factors were overlooked, and the documentary overemphasized the whole bad image angle, like it was supporting the idea that everyone tied to Christina's conviction was being judgmental because she had been associated with evil and was deemed morally deficient. I think it's important to remember that Christina took an Alford plea. A jury never convicted her. As I mentioned, she can argue that she didn't have good representation, but I think her argument for innocence is pretty weak. This was not some type of prosecution based on moral panic. Rather, it was based on getting justice for Amber. Moving to my last item, even though the telekinetic angle did not play a significant part in this case, it highlights an interesting time in American history. The movie Poltergeist came out in 1982. Not long after this is when Christina first showcased her abilities. A lot of Americans were thinking about the paranormal. Many people wanted to believe that Christina was telling the truth. During the same time period, there was a fascination in America with the idea of the sociopathic child. In a way, Christina's story was similar. There was no sociopathy, but there was, allegedly, evil, ghosts, and, of course, flying telephones. Christina and her family members made shocking claims that dazzled people. For example, Christina unplugged her alarm clock, but it came back on by itself. The same thing happened with the television, and objects were flying across rooms of the house. These incidents were supposedly tied to Christina's mood states. William Roll implied that Christina could electrify items with her emotions. Perhaps Christina was ahead of her time. The ability to convert emotions into electricity would be quite convenient these days. For example, when people become angry at their electric vehicles for not having enough range, their anger would actually charge the battery and give them more range. Unfortunately, Christina can't teach anybody about the emotional electricity trick from prison. Therefore, range frustration and anxiety will persist into the foreseeable future. Those are my thoughts in the case of Christina Boyer. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.